Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with reading in Genesis. I'm going to read it to you. It's basically 2 chapters. 3. It's 6, 7, and 8. It's about the flood because it's what it says to do in your assignment. It says to read, in your vocabulary, under the vocabulary, don't forget to do the vocabulary first. It says to read the flood account in Genesis 6 and 8, 7 and 8. So we're going to start in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. I'm not sure how to say that. Verse 5, And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. Stop right there for just a second. Notice it does not say God made us corrupt. God did not make us that way. That verse right there, verse 11, says the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. Think of the ark when we went to go see it. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. Pretty close, pretty exact, I'd say, from the one we saw. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Of fowls after their kind, of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, into the ark because of the waters of the flood, Of the clean beasts, and of the beasts that are not clean, and of the fowls, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. There went in two and two unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth and the sons of Noah and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. It's important to know that God shut the door. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. And all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl, and of cattle, and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. And God remembered Noah, and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot. She returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and again he sent forth a dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. All right, so there we go. There's the account. Pretty detailed, I'd say. All right, let's start then on page 37 in Gilgamesh. Page 37 where it says Utnapishtim. All right, upon the shore, wise Utnapishtim stood. To shield him from the mist, a cloak with hood protected him. His face was marked by time and wear, resulting from the doleful clime in which he lived. He knew about the fate the stones most sacred suffered. Ah, what hate compelled the breaking of the stones, he mused. He saw the boat with sail, a man confused and lost must steer that boat, for it's adrift. His wish for coming here may fail to lift a single burden, care or sorrow felt. Yet here's a man with whom much anguish dwelt. Now Gilgamesh did open wide his eyes. How long he slept he was unsure. He lies upon a bed, and not within the drifting boat. He sees the face of Utnapishtim, so remote. All cares and troubles seemed while he did gaze into the elder's eyes, like passageways into his soul. For once a man relieved him of his weariness, these eyes received. The king with kindness, Gilgamesh, would look upon this face to marvel. Then he took the hand of Utnapishtim, rising up. He felt refreshed. Now he wished to sup. The king began to talk about his grief, yet telling him the story brought relief. Like one who understood how mental pain could hurt the human soul, I die again. Each time I think about my friend, though dead, he lives within my heart. At night I dread the quiet, on him my lonely thoughts do dwell. I've journeyed long across the earth to tell my story to an understanding ear. My words were strange, and all refused to hear. I wandered like the blind from birth to find a mystic source of light to help unbind me from my slightless chains. Must death prevail, or something more besides the grave? Travail in vain all women then to bring their young into this world? Now thou art wise with tongue as well as mind. Across the mountain sea I came in search for wisdom. Happily I see thy face. Now all is well. I'd cross the lake of death again to end my loss. So telling his story to Noah just seemed to help him. Then Gilgamesh did feel the manly grip of Utnapishtim's hand. He knew his trip was not in vain. He felt a wondrous calm, while shoulders strong did bear the elder's palm. Old Utnapishtim spoke, Thy gallant deeds encourage me. These acts contain the seeds for hope. To travel far and wide to save thy friend from death, to raise him from the grave, is noble. None has done this saving thee. Thy quest may well affect eternity. And seeking light from one who's nearly blind, I lost my right eye long ago. While mind is sound and keen, I'm slowly losing sight within the left, reveals that thou art right. To covet light from those who cannot see. For human friendship from the soul is key to knowing what comes close to timelessness, since wonders found in friendship's true success exceed temporal bounds like beauty's charm. A soulful love affects the heart, thus harm befalls the soul when love is lost. I learned the ache thou feelest in thy breast that burned thy soul for many months. The fire consumes one's heavy heart and mind until what looms among the ash is only the beloved, and not ourselves at first reproved. The way I felt, but thou hast tasted much. The thing that I desire, not life as such, but everlasting life that brings the dead to life, that sets the prisoners who dread their closed retreat at liberty, that frees the sinner of his sin, for love decrees it so. My friend, dost thou desire this life? Then walk along this hopeful path. The strife and conflicts of the soul, when death appears, are bearable at least amidst our tears. No doubt this fire from God with searing flame is his compassion for the soul. The same, I'm sure, appears in hell's and heaven's climes. There is no difference, for many times I thought that God bestows a hell for those who suffer loneliness. Perhaps he chose to teach the soul about his purity that's only found in lonely agony. Now seek this one, let him be thy desire. This Holy One of everlasting fire surrounds himself with boundless solitude throughout creation, both refined and crude. Let loss of love direct thee to thy heart to find thy own divine and holy part. While speaking, Utnapishtim's hand remained on Gilgamesh. At last the king obtained a restful calm with time's continuance, dissolving into insignificance. Yet Gilgamesh did note the lonely look within the eyes of Utnapishtim, took a route along the shore. When tired, they'd rest by sitting on the rocks, an honored guest, he felt, a student privileged hearing sage advice from one who saw another age. They talked like long-lost friends by hap to meet, as father would to only son when days complete. Then Gilgamesh entreated him to speak. Thy words show wisdom true, yet bold I seek the reasons for thy loneliness. Thy face reveals a sorrow clearly shown. This place has luxury enough for thee and wife, yet why no peace enjoying pleasant life? Thy noble quest to save thy friend has brought thee to this land. How different my lot! I dwell apart from others, not by choice. This cell of comfort scorns me to rejoice. I'll tell thee all I know, this tragic tale. I seldom speak, e'en now my heart could fail. Now, I was really confused by this part, but I think basically that Noah's alone, and he's referring to Jesus when he's talking about the Holy One, but Noah lived in the time before Jesus. He lived in the time when, in the Old Testament times, when you just had to believe, that you just had to believe that Jesus was to come, but he hadn't been there yet. So I'm thinking that maybe, Noah that's kind of what that's referring to, that it was in the Old Testament times, it was before Jesus, but it was a time that they looked forward to him coming the first time, I think. Okay, the Great Flood. This is the last part, I believe. Nope, almost. Nope. Dear. Shuruppak grew from little river town into a mighty city walled renown for strength and trade along the stream Euphrates. Many gods did often teem about the city's streets, but who can know the hearts and minds of gods? They seldom show benevolence. One day in killing mood, the fickle gods contrived to fully flood the earth to drown both man and child, as well as blameless beasts, both tame and wild. They all agreed their father Anu gave his blessing sad, and Ishtar, quick to crave all wickedness, oh yes, she worked her wiles. And Enlil, remember Enlil is the god of spirit as well as earth and wind. Well, there it is. God of earth and wind, beguiles with gentle air, but kills with raging wind, and rips a house apart till naught can find. He pulls the ear of aged Anu, sound advice he gives, and petty gods all found, a role to play as well. They offered praise when fatal floods would last for 7 days. But Ea, which is the god of springs and water and of the arts. But Ea, friend to man, withdrew to seek me out, rehearsing all the scheme with weak and trembling voice. O man, the floods will come. Now save thyself, dismantle all thy home. With boards construct a vessel, watertight and large. Forsake thy costly treasures, bright and empty works that soon will pass away. Preserve both man and beast without delay. Now down here at the bottom it says that some accounts state that Ea spoke to the boards of the house, which in turn told Utnapishtim. Ea could then say that he did not violate the oath of not telling any human about the coming destruction. This is talking about the flood, but it's talking about it in a way of the gods. These woeful words induced my speech to fail. This weighty burden frightened me. To sail a flood that gods create appeared too great a task for me. Yet I obeyed my fate. When speech returned, I asked to build a boat. Will cause a stir, no matter is remote. The people here are careful to observe unusual things. What shall I say to swerve from answering their questions and concerns? And what about the doubter who returns? The god considered what I said, then spoke. 'Tis true, constructing shelter seems a joke, yet fabricate this tale by entering Shurapuk Enlil is prohibiting. Since Enlil hates thee, Ea will destroy the earth by flood, so Enlil to annoy. At this point Yudnaptishim laughed aloud. The witless gods, such are the minds, so proud. They never work together, daily life is but a game to them. Continued strife is all they know, and competition guides their motives. Human woe their smallness hides. Now Yudnaptishim stopped and stared. He seemed provoked by what he said, as though he deemed the conversation wanting rationale. At last he once again began his tale. I knew no other choice. I pleaded long. With all the town, yea, many laughed, yet strong and skilful craftsmen offered aid to build the boat. Soon work began within a field. Outside the walls the people booed and jeered, as 7 decks with 9 compartments neared completion. Cube-like was its shape, but safe to brave the coming flood. Its sight did chafe the people all the more. Our stores of grain with wine and gold were stowed before the rain began to fall. Then divers kinds of beasts were placed on board the craft. They came from east, from west, from everywhere. My sons with wives were next. Then those who wished to save their lives, the city's craftsmen, not a few, arrived, whose skills would help the people who survived. And one was skilled with piloting by stars. The dreadful day arrived, a day that mars my conscience. Ea gave the order grim, now shut the door, O men, the day shall dim, all clouds shall blacken sky. I closed the door. In moments winds began to howl and roar. Collapse of homes was terrifying. Trees uprooted, dead afloat upon the seas. Of waters all were gone. Man's cherished things, his home with wealth destroyed. Yea, mighty kings would share the fluent tomb with common men. The waters overtopped the banks. Our den of safety left its moorings, moving past debris and trash that angry waves did cast abroad. Thus ended man's conceited hopes. The waters rose to cover mountain slopes. So massive came the devastation cruel, the gods repented of their deed. They duel with puny man. Yet now, like scolded dogs, they cowered low. They cried like squealing hogs, appointed to the bloody slaughterhouse. Why, even lustful Ishtar, silly mouse, travailing false maternal pain, exclaimed, My precious people, heavens do be blamed. I never thought to see you suffer so. Ha! Planned she death for all, but now with flow of tears the people still to her belonged. She failed to see that she herself had wronged. At last the 7th day arrived. The flood was over now. Upon the deck I stood to watch the waters leave the earth like hair that shaky fingers brushed away to bear a recent widow's face that suffered loss. In unbelief I gazed upon the dross and wreckage. Not a single sound was heard. No laughing boys and girls, nor singing bird. Just noise of my own weeping broke the hush. The earth was strewn with many dead. To rush to bury them I found beyond my reach. Now stones, that's the victims of the flood, were turned to stones, is what it says. They looked like fish upon a beach, awashed by tide and baking in the sun. I held my head for pain and had begun to weep the more. What reason justifies this senseless carnage? Like a boy who tries to understand his mother's death, I sought a meaning when none existed. Then I thought, perhaps these stones would soon be raised to stand erect and whole by kind and mighty hand. Alas, the way of God's compassion lacks. The dead remained. This horrid sight attacks my mind for evermore. I hoped in vain. Now for the gods I have a strong disdain. A dove I soon discharged, that flew in haste around the boat with hopes to find, then taste a berry fresh, but found no branch to rest. A comely swallow then was freed to test the land, but he returned to me as well. At last I loosed a raven black to tell me whether muddy ground was safe to tread. The waters had receded now. He fled with swift ascent and soon was out of sight. The bird remained at large. Thus time was ripe to leave the boat. The land would now suffice. I took a lamb to offer sacrifice. The smoky fumes that gave a fragrant scent enticed the gods above their quick descent, surprised me as they gathered near the place. Then Enlil sought to take my life, but grace I found in Ea's eyes. The noble god did stay the other's hurtful hand. How odd, the ways of gods! For Enlil placed his hand upon my brow, while watched the august band, pronouncing blessing good to me. O man, he said, accept thy place among the clan. For immortality is thine, the river's end, the source from which the lively currents send the life-sustaining drink, shall make abode for thee and wife. In this I'll solve my node. My wife and I complied with this decree. We left that woeful sight of misery. We're lonely, yes, that's true, yet we endure this exile, since the Holy One, who's pure and never petty like the gods, attends our loneliness, and thus our sorrow ends. My doleful countenance reflects the past, and not our future hopes alive and vast. So that was the Gilgamesh version of the flood. And that's the reason why we had to read the actual account first. You can tell the difference between the two. I'm not sure as to why Noah is still alive, except that maybe that's how they looked at everlasting life, is just living this lonely life of just living forever. So I'm not sure, but anyway, so they're saying that there was a flood, but the gods did it, and this is why and this is how. Now here's the trial of Gilgamesh. Now, what shall I provide for thee? Thy quest and search for everlasting life, how best to snatch thy friend from death, has led thee hither to receive a potent fed on wisdom's bread. He paused and stood beside a gnarled bush. He stared upon the tide, as if the key to life would wash ashore. But soon he shook his head and said, no more relief I have to give. Return to build thy life anew. To grief thou must not yield. Once more King Gilgamesh became depressed. The words from Utnapishtim's lips addressed not hope, but pure defeat. His aged face reflected strong a struggle taking place within his soul, a war he often fought, and never could the conquest fully wrought. I came to simply life obtain, he cried. I'll never quit my only friend who died. I'm sure that thou possess the ways of life. Thy keen remarks do cut me as a knife. With hand uplifted, Utnapishtim stayed the king from further words. Thou art betrayed. The way is hard that brings a life of joy. Indeed, I think perhaps I shall employ a test to see if thou canst bear the weight of everlasting life. Now come, it's late. No, first the test. I shall endure the task. Yea, tell me straight, the worst thou need not mask. Then Utnapishtim spoke. If thou remain awake 1 week of days, save one, retain thy wakefulness a week of nights. By this, the passage mocking death thou cannot miss. So his test for everlasting life is, can he stay awake for an entire week? This task I gladly meet. I'll start today. A week will quickly pass, I'll not delay. Yet first allow me to rest for just a spell by sitting here. But once he sat, he fell asleep with anger. Utnapishtim called his wife. My wife, look yonder, I'm appalled that one so strong would slumber while I spoke. He wants eternal life, but quickly broke the one condition to receive the prize. He's really seeking death, for I surmise that sleep is but another form of death, pursued by idle folks. With sleep there's breath. This marks the difference between the two. Then spoke his wife. Awake the lad. How few can suffer time apart from needful sleep. He journeyed long, I'm sure he wants to keep thy words, yea, he'll pant for what he's done. Not so, my wife. I've learned that every one is prone to lying well. While rising up from slothful ease, this youthful pup will hotly disavow his sudden snooze. Nay, let him sleep. The facts he can't refuse. If thou wilt bake a loaf of barley bread for every day while on his stony bed. Thus barley loaves were baked and promptly placed each day around his head, like beams that grace the rising sun. Upon the 7th day, old Utnapishtim shook the sleeper. Stay in death like rest forever? The test is past, and thou hast failed. Thou knowest now at last to live as gods demands a greater power than thou possesseth. Thou shalt leave this hour. Then Gilgamesh complained, I seek for life and truth, yet every pathway ends with strife, and death the same as here. What shall I do? Return to Uruk, act thy kingly part, pursue no longer fondest hopes to gain thy quest. Then Udnaptishtim took his mournful guest beside the shore. He called across the lake for Urshanabi. Boatman, come and take the king. Return him to thy shore. How wrong thy judgment that allowed his passage long across the lake. Now take those beastly hides and burn them all, since every skin abides a memory of his friend. This is his plot. Then clothe him royally, a king of might and competence his subjects should behold. The boatman rendered all that he was told. Now this is the secret to eternal life. This is almost the last part. Sad Gilgamesh embarked the blackish boat with Urshanabi at the helm. The coat of hides was gone. He felt distressed in heart and mind. He noticed Udnaptishtim start with downcast look, as if a friend he'd lost, as if the war he waged would further cost. My dear, the wife of Udnaptishtim said, with whisper soft, recall when sadness paid a visit to thy heart. This lad appeared. Though many perils challenged him, he feared not anything to seek thy words and face. I know that thou, my love, canst find a place within thy heart to help that grieving youth, for thou art wise and teacher of the truth. Perhaps I can, he said, yet youth abuse the aged soul with stares. They muse about the lines upon the face and hope that sage advice they'll find, and thus to cope with daily life, but disappointment find when wisdom oft evades the elder mind. King Gilgamesh, he called, I've felt thy pain before within my soul. If thou shalt gain a life anew, then hear my words and mark them well, a secret thought. Yea, truly dark, the saying is that I possess, I'll share with thee beneath this river's currents fair. Located in its deepest depths, a bloom of crimson hue exists to cheer the gloom surrounding it, since waters deep obscure the light. Go, pick this plant, its nectar pure, rewards partakers well with youthful looks. My friend, take heed, the thorns like sharpened hooks shall pierce thy hand, for life begins with pains, yet small the price one pays if youth obtains. So he's told him how to go get to stay young forever. With joy the king attempted speech, but found he lacked the words to say. With leap then bound he caught the elder, hugging him with warm embrace. That was returned, but soon with arm uplifted, Udnaptishtim said, "'Tis well, now go in peace, my friend." He quickly failed to work with Urshanabi, finding where the deepest waters of the river were. Hold on. Yeah? No. No, I'm not. I'm recording a class right now. Bye. The deepest waters of the river were. At last he tied upon his legs some stones to use as weights. Descending deep, though tones of colors were the same, he saw the rose of deepest red amid the thorns. He chose a bloom in full and plucked the plant. He saw the water mingled with his blood, for raw became his hands that felt the salty brine. With bloom secure he cut the rope-like vine. To free himself with quick assent he broke the surface, held the blossom high, and spoke with joy, "I have the bloom, the flower bright. Now come to Uruk, let us take our flight." Now this is the loss of eternal life. King Gilgamesh and Urshanabi walked for days along the narrow trails and talked about the things that friends are wont to do. Then Urshanabi asked, "The bloom with hue of red, the nectar thou hast yet to taste? Why this delay, good sir? Yea, where's thy haste to try the mystic powers of the plant, to use of which should prove significant?" But Gilgamesh replied, "I hesitate because the potion sweet may fail to sate my hopes. So first I'll let an older man partake of mystic dew to test my plan for bringing Enkidu back from the dead." One day the pathway crossed a stream that led into a small and tranquil lake. They placed the plant beside the water's edge, unlaced their shoes, and fell into the soothing lake. The double splash awoke a sleeping snake. He raised his lazy head and slowly spun about to see the bloom. while in the sun it seemed a glowing fire. His cloven tongue did sense a sweetness near, and slid among the reeds to hide himself. He saw his chance, and swallowed whole the crimson bloom. With glance the serpent saw the men were coming in. He slithered through the rocks and left his skin. Thus every year all snakes renew their life by sloughing outer skin. The king was rife with anguish when he found the bloom was gone. He wept and once again felt all alone. So now he returns to Uruk. King Gilgamesh soon knew his quest had failed. The search of everlasting life that paled all other goals in time became as dim. He must return at once. Along with him, upon the trail, old Urshanabi strolled. The boatman listened to the stories told of stately Uruk and the royal throne, of regal acts, no detail left undone. The tales a wanderer appreciates. They soon arrived before the city's gates. Beside them begged a man, both old and blind. King Gilgamesh approached the man to find if he remembered and could do it all. Relate, poor fellow, what thou canst. Recall the brave and mighty warrior Enkidu. The man reflected, much as if he knew the name, but then a shrug, with shaking head, announced that memory failed to know the dead. King Gilgamesh was grieved to learn how soon the people had forgotten all. The moon began its slow ascent with beams that broke above the walls. Then Urshanabi spoke. In truth, how great this people who attain such lofty walls, a credit to thy reign. Then briefly Gilgamesh forgot the past. Erect he stood, as prideful eyes were cast. He thought, while gazing at the massive wall, yea, present life is wondrous after all. Okay, so the main thing I think that we can learn from that is you can't work for salvation. And I think that's what he finally learned at the end. He could not work for eternal life. So anyway, this has been long and I'm sorry, but you can go ahead and answer your question.